are these people?
Collin, they face exploitation, but also their faces are exploited. You're going to find out how. Found this article, thought it was very important, and I expect the reason it's going to be coming here, if it's not already. But I think the implications are a little more terrifying than we think. So let's get into it. So this is Tareq Hajjaj over at ScheerPost, who writes, witnesses say the Israeli army is using facial recognition technology in its assault on North Gaza, as it's been doing frequently. We've already covered at checkpoints and whatnot, right? For a while.
Correct.
But we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it. So the army made the men stand in front of the camera for at least 3 minutes per person, Al-Dawar said, long enough for the cameras to scan their faces and reveal personal data seemingly already stored in the Israeli military system. After the scans, Al-Dawar said, the soldiers would reveal information about each individual, including their name, age, work, family members, and names, places of residence, and even their personal activities. We're going to get to that. Hold on to that. When they suspected someone, they took him away to an unknown location, Al-Dawar said. As for those who had relatives who belonged to Palestinian resistance movements or who personally belonged to resistance factions, Al-Dawar speculated that their fate was immediate death. What does that sound like to you, Collin? Sound familiar?
Genocide?
I mean, it sounds
like
very...
Holocaust?
Sounds like fucking Spielberg wrote a movie about this nonsense.
Right.
Well, one people get one line, the other people get the other line. Which line do you want to be in? Where's that little fucking, only girl with red dresses and whatnot on, huh? Where's that at? All right, no one knows Schindler's List, just me. But, so... citing stories he had heard from others in Gaza whose friends and relatives were taken at checkpoints and had not been seen again or returned to Gaza in body bags. Al-Dawar is one of the thousands of people who were expelled from the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza in order to move south at gunpoint by the Israeli army. The forced exodus of thousands out of Jabalia is part of the Israeli offensive on northern Gaza that started on October 5th. Its objective is to implement a proposal put forward by a group of senior Israeli generals that aims to empty northern Gaza of its inhabitants through starvation and bombardment, the so-called Generals Plan. We covered that not too long ago, right? Where they're pushing them into Egypt. I think that's Israel's secret plan, right? Not so secret when they tell everybody, though, is it? Survivors from Jabalia, like Al-Dawar, report that the Israeli army is using facial recognition technology to screen residents in the ongoing assault, often identifying people from long distances and picking them out from a crowd. Survivors from Jabalia, like Al-Dawar, report that the IDF is using facial recognition technology to screen... I just read that, didn't I? Witnesses say that the Israeli army has set up security checkpoints throughout northern Gaza where the facial recognition technology is being deployed. The military is also reporting using this technology when it storms shelters for the displaced. Witnesses report that in these cases, Israeli forces will corral people in enclosed places using ditches dug by military bulldozers and process them individually. Mondoweiss spoke to several survivors from Jabalia who said that the Israeli army is using quadcopter drones to identify people immediately from a distance, and that soldiers are stopping people at checkpoint to conduct camera scans that last for several minutes. Witnesses say that these were particularly unnerving as they stood awaiting an uncertain fate. Witnesses also report that the army picked people out of a crowd at checkpoints using what they described as a red laser pointer that was either mounted on a tank or on a soldier's rifle. Witnesses told Mondoweiss that after the army scans people's faces, most people are detained for field interrogations. During these encounters, soldiers use what Ishkai Al-Dawar described as psychological tactics to unsettle the people being questioned, claiming that they know everything about their lives, and if they lie in their answers, they will be killed. The questions are typically wide-ranging, Al-Dawar said. They ask us about our relatives, our neighbors, the movements of the resistance fighters on the ground, who we know from them, and who they are. They convince us that they already know everything about us by mentioning intimate details about our lives, and then they threaten us with killing if we lie. So, thoughts so far, Care Bear?
I mean, this kind of reminds me of when I go through custom.
Worse.
Yeah,
Way
worse. But
worser.
I think no, but it's. I feel that I mean, it's not to say that the technology is not in place already, but I feel like we have the prototype of it already in place here.
Yep.
Because, and I'll just share, like prior to me becoming a U.S. citizen, I was on the green card, and when I was living in Boston, I would fly. There's only one airport, so you would fly into like Boston Logan if I was going home. And there was a point for like maybe about 5 or 6 years, I would travel on average like once a year, usually abroad, whether it was to Africa or like home to London or both. And there was this one agent, like every time that I will get off the plane to go through customs, I would always get this guy for some odd reason. Um, and he will always, it always felt like he asked me a few more extra questions than necessary. Like even,
Well,
the questions like, where did you go? How long were you there? What did you do? Like
mm-hmm.
it, like some a little more personal that I wouldn't get into here. But it always just felt very like weird. So yeah, so it just kind of reminds me of that, as you said, but a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but then I
Well,
think especially now with everything going digital, like the fact that I can use my phone with the Face ID in order to open it and like
and keep in
pay
mind
and all that kind of stuff. It's like,
how
yeah, the
much
technology
data
is there.
how much data that can be tied to that, right?
Right,
So,
right. So
that's
they
essentially
know,
what.
so they have access to your credit card, they have access to your accounts, they
Well,
probably have access to
all your
what you're
socials.
searching online, on socials
Yep.
and social media and all that kind of stuff. So
Yep.
no,
Which
it's
we
not that
covered.
far fetched.
Israel being literally using AI stuff to do that as well. But I wanted to kind of
Right.
showcase what this actually means in practice, right? So I found this video from January 31st, right? So it's been happening for a minute, as we all know. But this is them using this facial recognition technology. I want you to pay attention to the subtitles here, which I will highlight. But they're doing this to women and children as they walk past, right?
رئيس أركان
So,
الجيش العربي كله. أحلى أبو خالد، شو عليك؟ اخص عليك، شوف لوين وديت هالشعب، شوف يا سنوار، شوف يا أبو العبد، يا أبو الوليد خالد المشعل. وديت البدلة تبعك لترايكلين اليوم؟ يا أبو الوليد وديت البدلة على ترايكلين؟ وديتها.
yeah, they're talking to these people directly. Like, did you take your suit to the dry cleaners? And they're harassing these people who are already literally on a trail of tears. Like,
عشان يكون منظرك حلو، افتح بعد الغداء في الاوتيل. لما تطلع الغرفة عندك في الاوتيل افتح تلفزيون، شوف شعبك شوي. بالله عليك يا ابو الوليد، بالله عليك يا ابو العبد. ايوه كملوا نسوان واطفال فقط.
So I just wanted to kind of make that a little more personal for people. They're giving names and family members and intimate details of these lives these people are living. So imagine that here. You walk by, your local constable. Like, Could you imagine? You know?
I mean, I could no, but you say that, I could see that as far as, like, cops.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
For
especially
sure.
if they interrogate you, they could be like they don't even say they don't even need to say, "So what were you doing at around this time?"
Yeah.
They can just straight up
Right.
tell you, "You were here.
Yeah.
You were doing this thing," and being like, "Oh, shit," you know?
Yeah.
So
Pre-crime stuff. You know?
right.
So, while Mondoweiss could not independently verify the nature of the cameras being described by witnesses, the use of facial scanning and facial recognition technology by the IDF has been well documented. Facial recognition technology used by Israel here's the kicker, pulls from a database of information about Palestinians that has been built up over years, including on Palestinians in the West Bank. One of these databases is called, here's the kicker, Wolfpack. Some of y'all remember that. Some of y'all in the
Yeah.
chat whispered of a dream at one point.
Right. Those of you who've been in the space long enough will know
Yeah,
what that is.
literally called Wolfpack. I wish it wasn't. Which, according to Amnesty International, contains extensive information on Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, including where they live, who their family members are, and whether they wanted for questioning by Israeli authorities. Right? So I'm sure this ties into where's daddy and all that stuff, right? So, you know, in the old city of Hebron in the southern West Bank, Israeli surveillance cameras use facial recognition systems called Red Wolf on Palestinians who pass through checkpoints in the city. Their faces scanned without their knowledge or consent and compared with biometric entries in databases which exclusively contain information about Palestinians, Amnesty described in May 2023. It is unclear whether the facial recognition technology used throughout the ongoing assault on northern Gaza is the Red Wolf system or the other systems that the Israeli army have been reported to have used throughout the war on Gaza. In March, the New York Times reported that the Israeli Cyber Intelligence Division Unit 8200 used facial recognition technology developed by CoreSight, an Israeli company, in combination with Google Photos. Together, those technologies enabled Israel to pick faces out of crowds and grainy drone footage. Right? So, you know, I'm sure. Also, look at, you know, some alumni of 8200 and see where they're at these days. But likewise, it is unclear whether these facial recognition systems are drawing upon data from Wolfpack or another Israeli database, but media attention has recently focused on how that data is being processed and generated through a number of controversial AI programs to identify potential targets. Programs like Lavender, The Gospel, and Where's Daddy have pushed human rights watches to warn against the use of faulty data and exact approximations to inform military actions. We've talked about specifically how they allow mistakes, right, to the tune of percentages. That's innocent people's being data-driven decisions. So not great. Several media exposés have also shown how some of these AI systems loosely identify civilians as targets for assassination or alert the Israeli army to target members of Hamas when they are with their families. Testimonies gathered by Mondoweiss for this report and in previous reporting confirmed that the brutal Israeli invasion in northern Gaza is utilizing these technologies as means of organizing how it conducts mass arrests, field executions, and ethnic cleansing. So, yeah. Hiba al-Fram is one of the displaced people who passed through the army's checkpoints during the Jabalia invasion. She says she was subjected to a facial and retinal scan, an experience she described as terrifying. Everyone was standing in the line, men and women, and everyone held up their IDs in their hands. Soldiers were using lasers to check our ID card from a distance before we reached them, she told Mondoweiss. Mondoweiss could not confirm what lasers the military was using. Al-Fram said the army picked people out of the queue using a laser pointer affixed to a tank. She described the army shining the laser on the ID cards and calling on people to advance towards the checkpoint where the soldiers set up a camera. So wanted to just kind of show what IOF is willing to use here. So I don't know if these systems are integrated with this, but I imagine they are. I know Elbit Systems have made stuff similar, right? These are like smart optic devices and smart weapon systems in general. So I figured I'd bring this to just kind of showcase some of that. So let's roll this beam footage real quick.
A military vehicle approaching. On the roof, the new autonomous smash hopper firing system. The car is armored and equipped by Plasma RAM. The objective? To aim and shoot without being seen.
We took the capabilities of the Smash, this advanced vision system that allows precision shots from the first bullet against static or moving targets, including drones, and we have it placed in the remote-controlled firing system.
A system can be placed on traditional military vehicles, autonomous cars, armored personal carriers, even robots, with one specific objective in mind: to remove soldiers from friction points whilst achieving the same operational result, even with moving targets. In fact, this is how it works. In the era of all technology, it looks rather easy to use.
I block a target with a single click. I lift the safety catch and I shoot. I have hit my target. I'm looking for another target, shooting. A third target, shooting. It's that simple, but above all, precise.
This is exactly the kind of autonomous weapon system that can be used by any soldiers in the southern border in facing the Gaza Strip and in the north facing Lebanon and Syria. These systems.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's going to work well. Thoughts so far, Care Bear?
No, again, I just feel like I'm not surprised we're not seeing this technology already. But again, I just think police, and again, given cop cities that are being implemented, around the country, and like all this money is going towards the new toys. I mean, we've seen the robot dogs, that are starting to kind of pop up in cities like New York. Like, I'm sure this is kind of, I don't think it will be as extreme like this, but like things like this that they're able to kind of implement, and and given the empire, like I could well imagine Trump would even want to kind of rack up police funding to even have some of this technology, but it's going to benefit the elite because they're
Who
not
trains
scared
our
of
cops
us.
again?
Right. They're not scared of us. And then like, especially if you're like protesting and all that kind of stuff, this is stuff that they can use against you. Like they can just scan your face, which even with that, the idea of like, and again, like going back to 2020, we were all wearing masks then, but it was the idea mostly, especially if you're a protest, it will kind of keep you safe, that people won't be able to kind of necessarily identify who you are. Now,
why do you think they make it such a big deal when calling out protesters that they're masked now, right? Especially Israel. You don't think that they're using that technology here to gather data and information? It literally said it could do it from Google Photos. It can't do it from videos from cell phones or, drone shots while somewhere else. Like,
so I think this is just, I just feel like for people, they should be, they're using it in Palestine right now, but this is technology I could see easily being used here to intimidate and to scare people. I mean, going off of the second story that I talked about tonight in terms of, Trump and his fetishization of Israel, basically, is, wanting to protect those relationships that he has. So using some of this technology here to dissuade people from protesting here. So
yeah. So back to this woman's testimony. The soldiers arrested over 100 men in front of her eyes. They had arrested them in front of their wives, and they were beating them, cursing them, threatening to kill them and their families. Many wives saw their husbands in this situation. The soldiers were then telling the women, "We will kill you by a sniper bullet. We will run over your skulls with tanks. We will stone you to death. We will make you bleed to death." Al-Frame continued. The women were terrified and thought they'd be killed. Then the soldiers would gather 5 women at a time and walk them to a security check or a scan of their face or eye. They had arrested 2 women in front of me from the crowd based on their face scans. People later said they were relatives of people known to be members of armed factions, but they were women. They were carrying children. The soldiers ordered them to give their children to other women. The mothers started to panic like crazy. They looked around frantically for any woman they knew to give their children to. We would walk towards the face scanning point in utter terror in our hearts, walking between dozens of tanks and soldiers pointing their weapons at us. We would stand there for 3 or 5 minutes. They were the worst minutes of my life. A person's fate was decided based on that scan. Either arrest, beating, and humiliation, or release them and force them to leave towards the south. After the soldiers take the face scan, the questions about neighbors and relatives began. They asked us where they are, where we could find them, when we last saw them. We did not know anything about these details, so we did not lie when we said we did not know. They would threaten us if we lied. They would uncover the lie and shoot us immediately. Of all the terrifying moments experienced by residents of northern Gaza, many say that they experienced the most terrifying moments when they were stopped at an Israeli checkpoint. The most terrifying and frightening moments were the moments when you stand in front of the camera to get your face scanned, Abu Karim al-Zawadi, a journalist in northern Gaza, told Mondoweiss. Before al-Zawadi reached the facial recognition point on his way toward Gaza City, he saw many young men being arrested by the army. As a Palestinian journalist working in the Gaza Strip, he, like many of his colleagues, is at particular risk of being targeted. 2 minutes, the minutes we stand in front of the camera feel like years, al-Zawadi said. As a journalist conveying our message to the world, I was terrified. Al-Zawadi said that during their march south, many Jabalia residents would attempt to avoid upcoming checkpoints, often to no avail. We had heard the stories about the checkpoints and how they were arresting people, so we tried in whatever way possible to avoid passing through them, but there was no way of escaping. Keep in mind, these are like these supposed safe paths, right? These,
Right.
peaceful corridors, right? So what other options do you have, Collin, if not through the peaceful corridor? Like, where else are you going to go?
Right.
Where
Right.
they're bombing and shooting and killing people. That's the other option. You can take that risk if you don't want to go through these checkpoints.
Mhm.
Pretty much. So, okay. Doesn't sound like very peaceful fucking corridor, does it?
Nope.
When we were examined and the scan shows that one of us will be arrested, the soldiers start beating and cursing them before they take them away, and they disappear. We saw the scene play out in front of us for dozens of young men. Al-Zawadi did not see himself what information was revealed to the soldiers by the scans, but he said the soldiers would repeat aloud what details they were seeing on their screens, including people's personal information, names, relatives, and more. While people were waiting for the scan, Al-Zawadi said that the soldiers would curse at and beat the young men. The army severely beat Al-Zawadi while he was standing and waiting for his turn. They were dirty in their treatment of us, he said, but what can we say in response to a military armed with all these weapons and ready to kill? They used every humiliating method against ordinary people, he added. So, thoughts so far, Care Bear?
I mean, I think I've said what I needed to say, like, and given Trump is now president, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of this technology wouldn't be wrapped up here.
Yep.
Especially, again, if he's looking to deport or criminalize protesters who are pro-Palestine. You know, like I could see this, but I think just more importantly, you know, this can just be a part of the techno state that, you know, we're kind of, I know Himbo talks about that a lot, you know,
Yeah.
on his show.
Whitney
You
Webb,
know,
all
like,
those people.
right.
Yep.
So it's just our world is becoming more digital, and like, you know, talking about making your IDs digital, like just as far as your phone, but like they don't even
Yep.
need to do that. They just can scan your face. And you know, like we said, the technology is already there. It's just a matter of mass marketing it to make it, you know, more accessible to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, corporations and to organizations that would benefit from using technology. So it's scary to think about, but I think just using that as a fear tactic, you know, in Palestine to make people be like, oh shit, like they know everything about me, and like as a way to scare them,
Right.
which is kind of fucked up.
Yeah. And I'm sure they're throwing whatever data they can into it too. So,
Right.
you know, but like you also saw Google Photos are being used. How complicit is Google in all that? I know they've gotten loads of backlash for helping Israel AI stuff in that regard. So keep an eye out for that stuff. And I'm sure talking about that kind of thing is why we're demonetized on YouTube. So you can go to codashfeed.com/indienewsnetwork or scan that QR code on your screen to help keep us afloat outside of that system. We appreciate any help you can give that way. But if you can't, we get it. Capitalism sucks. Like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Do all the normal engagement things you would normally do. It allegedly helps us. So, you know, whatever works. But, you know, help us get to 3K. Otherwise, thanks for watching.